Power is not given. It is taken. It moves in silence. It controls perception. Psychology of power. Master the mind. Control the game.
Franklin D. Roosevelt, A Psychology of Resilient Leadership in 1933. The United States stood at the edge of collapse. Banks across the country were shutting their doors. Factories had fallen silent. Unemployment had reached levels the nation had never seen before. Millions of Americans woke up every morning unsure if they would eat that day. The economic engine that once powered the American dream had stalled, and for many, hope itself seemed to be disappearing. Bread lines stretched for blocks in major cities. Families who had once lived comfortably now faced eviction from their homes. Savings accounts had evaporated overnight as banks failed and businesses closed. Across the Atlantic Ocean, the situation was equally alarming. In Europe, authoritarian regimes were rising with dangerous speed. Political extremism was spreading, and democracy appeared increasingly fragile. The world was entering an era defined by fear, instability, and uncertainty. And in the middle of this historic crisis stood a man whose own body had betrayed him. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This is not simply the story of an American president. It is the story of resilience and how personal adversity can forge extraordinary leadership. Franklin Roosevelt was born in 1882 into wealth and privilege. His childhood was far removed from the struggles that most Americans would later face during the Great Depression. Raised in Hyde Park, New York, Roosevelt grew up surrounded by comfort, education, and political influence. He attended elite schools, including Groton and later Harvard University, where he developed both confidence and ambition. From an early age, Roosevelt saw politics as his destiny. He admired his distant cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, whose bold leadership had shaped the presidency decades earlier. Franklin imagined himself following a similar path, one defined by public service, national leadership, and influence. But early success can sometimes hide a dangerous illusion: confidence that has never faced. Adversity is confidence that has never truly been tested. And Roosevelt had yet to encounter the challenge that would reshape his life forever. In 1921, at the age of 39, Roosevelt's life changed dramatically. While vacationing in Canada, he began experiencing sudden weakness in his legs. Within days, the paralysis spread. Doctors soon delivered the devastating diagnosis: polio. The disease left Roosevelt permanently unable to walk. In the early 20th century, disability was often interpreted as weakness, especially in politics. For a rising political figure with national ambitions, the news seemed catastrophic. Many observers believed Roosevelt's career was effectively over. Political leadership, after all, was expected to project strength and vitality. And yet Roosevelt refused to accept that his story had ended. Instead of retreating from public life, he began a long and painful process of rehabilitation. He spent years learning how to stand using heavy steel braces. He practiced walking short distances with assistance, carefully controlling every movement. But Roosevelt understood something far more important than physical recovery: leadership. He realized is as much about perception as it is about power. If the public saw strength, they would believe in strength. And Roosevelt became a master at projecting that image. Photographs were carefully controlled. His wheelchair was rarely shown. Public appearances were staged to emphasize confidence rather than limitation. Behind the scenes, the struggle continued. But in public, Roosevelt appeared calm, composed, and determined. In 1932, America faced its greatest economic crisis. The stock market crash of 1929 had triggered the Great Depression. Banks collapsed with frightening speed. Factories closed their doors. Millions of workers suddenly found themselves unemployed. Entire communities struggled to survive. By the time Roosevelt ran for president, Fear had become the dominant emotion across the country. People feared losing their homes. They feared losing their jobs. But most of all, they feared the future. When Roosevelt stood before the nation during his first inaugural address in 1933, he understood that the crisis was not only economic, it was psychological. Confidence had disappeared, and without confidence, recovery would be impossible. So Roosevelt delivered one of the most famous lines in political history: "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Those words were not simply rhetoric, they were strategy. Roosevelt knew that before the economy could recover, the nation's sense of stability had to return. Fear had to be confronted directly. Hope had to be rebuilt, and leadership had to restore trust. Roosevelt quickly launched an ambitious program known as the New Deal. The New Deal was not a single policy. It was an entire framework designed to stabilize the nation. Banks were regulated to restore confidence in the financial system. Public works programs created millions of jobs, building bridges, roads, dams, and infrastructure. Programs like Social Security were introduced to protect vulnerable citizens. The scale of these reforms was unprecedented. Supporters praised Roosevelt for acting decisively. Critics warned that he was expanding federal power too far, but Roosevelt remained focused on the psychological dimension of leadership. He understood that communication mattered as much as policy. Through his famous fireside chats, Roosevelt spoke directly to the American people through radio broadcasts. His voice was calm. His tone was reassuring. He explained complex economic policies in simple language that ordinary citizens could understand. Families gathered around their radios to listen. For the first time, many Americans felt that the president was speaking directly to them. Trust slowly began to return. Confidence began to rebuild, and the nation gradually stabilized. But the world crisis was far from over. Across Europe, tensions were escalating rapidly. The rise of Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler threatened global stability. War erupted in 1939. At first, the United States remained largely isolationist. Many Americans believed the conflict should remain a European problem. Roosevelt, however, recognized the growing danger. He understood that the outcome of the war would shape the future of democracy itself. Then, on December 7, 1941, the situation changed dramatically. Japanese forces attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. The United States entered World War. Roosevelt now faced the enormous responsibility of leading not only economic recovery, but global conflict. He worked closely with leaders such as Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin to coordinate the Allied war effort. Despite his physical limitations, Roosevelt projected extraordinary political authority. His leadership helped guide the Allied nations through the most destructive war in human history. Privately, however, the burden was immense. Years of stress and illness were taking their toll. Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in April 1945, just weeks before the war in Europe finally ended. He had served 4 terms as president, longer than any leader in American history. His body had limitations, but his leadership had none. Psychologists often note that individuals who overcome personal adversity develop unique strengths. They learn patience. They learn empathy. They learn how to adapt. Under pressure, Roosevelt's inability to walk forced him to master another form of movement. Persuasion. Communication. Psychological. Leadership. He moved nations with words. He moved economies with confidence. And he helped move history itself toward victory. Some leaders project strength through dominance. Others project strength through endurance. Franklin Roosevelt proved that true power is not defined by physical ability. It is defined by resilience of the mind. Because in the end, power shapes history. But psychology shapes power.